Hey guys, Political Junkie 2414 here, and welcome back to my next election prediction video. Today we're going to be going over the 2022 U.S. Senate elections once again. Sorry I did not upload this yesterday. Usually I upload them on Saturdays, every other Saturday. But there was a personal matter that I had to deal with, so I was not able to make a video. Also, I was just kind of exhausted. I am now officially in the summer, hanging out. So there will be a lot more time for me to make videos for you guys, and it's going to be awesome. So without further ado, let's get into it. For the safe democratic states, let me just check to make sure the camera's working. All right. For the safe democratic states, everything is pretty much the same. Hold on, let me silence my phone. Forgot to do that. All right. Sorry about that. All right. Anyways, let's get so for the safe democratic states, pretty much nothing has changed. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much uh that's all the safe democratic states. For the safe Republican states, not a lot has changed either. There has been one reduction, and I will talk about that. You can see Iowa, I'm not putting as a safe red state anymore, and I will get into that in just a second. So as you can see, the map hasn't really changed that much for the safe states. As you can see, of course, Republicans have lost a safe seat in Iowa. Well, not lost it, but it is not safe anymore. So now let's get into the likely Democratic states. We got Washington, Colorado, and Connecticut for Democrats. Not a lot has changed here. I think, for Connecticut and Washington, no new polls have come out. I think Patty Murray, her lead against her Republican challenger, her presumptive Republican challenger, has increased as you can see in the polls, but it is not any different from what we last saw. Of course, these are Democrat sponsored polls, but it is also Washington. And yes, she did face a competitive race in 2010, but in 2016, she won by 18 points. Of course, it was a better environment for Democrats overall, but I do expect that to go down. And as of right now, I think that she would win by about 13, 14 points, just under a safe margin, or safe solid margin. Because a safe margin is anything higher that is 15% is a margin of victory at anything 15% or higher. Likely is of course anything from 5 to 15%. Lean is anything from 1 to 5%, and tilt is anything below 1%. For Colorado, of course, there are not a lot of good Republican candidates to take on Michael Bennett. Of course, he outperformed Hillary Clinton in 2016. He won by 6 points, while Hillary Clinton only won by 5 points. Not a huge outperformance there, but still something to take notice of. He, of course, did win very narrowly in 2010 when he in a very Republican wave environment. As you can see, this was a very good environment for Republicans. They were winning. They won multiple seats they hadn't been able to win. They won Illinois, Wisconsin, North Dakota, Arkansas, Pennsylvania. Although Pennsylvania, there was a Republican who switched to being a Democrat. Arlen Specter, of course, was that Republican. You had New Hampshire as safe with Kelly Ayotte. So you could see that the map was a lot different then. In 2016, it did get a little bit bluer, but still Republicans were able to outperform in a lot of these states. In Connecticut, there really hasn't been any difference either, no new polls. I think that Richard Blumenthal is pretty much safe for re-election. It's just the matter of margin of victory, and not she, he won by 29 points last time, and that is a pretty large margin. I do expect that to possibly be a likely margin. Just based on some of the polls, but of course, polls are not everything, and there are a lot of undecided voters in these polls. Um, you know, but so I do think that Connecticut could be a safe state. I am a little tempted to put it in the safe column right now, but I want to be, safe about it. And Connecticut does sometimes narrow up very slightly. I think that Ned Lamont in the governor's race will win by a smaller than expected margin, but of course larger than his 2018 margin. And I think that will translate into Richard Blumenthal's victory, especially in a red wave or a presumptive red wave. We don't know exactly how it's going to go yet because there are warning signs that 2022 may not be the red wave we were all expecting. Okay, so for the likely Republican states, we have Iowa, Missouri, Ohio, and Florida. Now I'm going to talk about Iowa first because you might be scratching your head. Why would I be putting that as as Chuck Grassley is an extremely popular incumbent? And the reason why I'm putting it there is because of Michael Franken, who's of course the Democratic nominee for Senate. He won the primary a couple weeks ago against Abby Finkenauer, who was the Democratic frontrunner for quite some time. But before the primary, I had noticed that some polls between Grassley and Franken showed things being especially close. You can see that that Franken's only losing to Grassley by 3 points in this poll. Of course, there are a lot of undecided voters, but the fact that there were so many that were unwilling to answer, as compared to these main polls between Finkenauer and Grassley, who, this was the expected matchup, did not end up happening. That is quite a showing. You know, I don't think that it will be this close by any means. I don't think that Franken really has a chance at winning, but Grassley is going to have a tougher than usual fight for his Senate seat this time. I think age will definitely play a factor because Grassley is going to be 89 this year. He's been in the Senate for almost 42 years, and you know, a majority of Iowans, including some Republicans, quite a few Republicans in Iowa, did not want Grassley to run again. But he is sticking with it, even though he is going to be 95 if he completes the term that he is running for in this election cycle. So yeah, Grassley could have a marginally competitive fight this time. But I don't think it'll be a high likely margin. Probably it'll be in the double digits, possibly in the single digits. Excuse me, I can't speak today. Missouri, not a lot has changed either. Of course, Eric Greedens is still leading in the Republican primary polls. He, of course, has a lot of allegations against him regarding sexual misconduct. Excuse me, the primary results haven't come in yet. Um, and I think that he's the only one really dragging down the race for the GOP. Of course, they do have a retiring Republican incumbent, Roy Blunt, who did win surprisingly narrowly in 2016. That probably would not have happened had Blunt run for re-election, um, or ran for re-election, whatever the correct term is. I don't think it's going to be this close in the final result. Of course, Eric Greedens is beating the presumptive Democratic nominee, Lucas Kunce, by only 3.5%. I think that this is underestimating Greedens. But I do think that he is definitely going to have there's going to be some pushback on him as I expect him to become the nominee, and that is really going to be, that's going to be a problem for Republicans in Missouri. I still think it's going to be very hard for Democrats to win in Missouri. I don't think it's going to happen in this election cycle. Um, but Eric Greenens could possibly become a he may be a vulnerable incumbent in future elections if he does win this one. He may be a vulnerable incumbent in 2028 or, down the line if he decides to stick in the Senate longer. But that is not our focus for today. In Ohio, not a lot has changed either. Of course, J.D. Vance and Tim Ryan are the Republican and Democratic nominees, respectively. Um, Tim Ryan is doing a little bit better against JD Vance in these polls, but once again, a large number of undecided voters. And I think that really the fact that Ohio has become such a Republican state in recent years, Rob Portman, being a very popular incumbent, did win by 21 points in 2016. He is, of course, not running for re-election. There was a messy primary fight to replace him. JD Vance was really propelled to victory by that Trump endorsement. In 2018, you might say, well, Sherrod Brown won by 7 points. Well, yes, but it was also a blue wave year, and yeah, there were a lot of Democratic held seats in 2018 that were lost in terms of the Senate elections. But if you look back, Sherrod Brown has a very strong history in Ohio. And he is the only Democratic elected official statewide in Ohio. He is pretty popular, and it's going to be an interesting fight in 2024 for Brown, because he is running for re-election. And Ohio is now becoming trending very rightward, but that is not our focus for today. I think Tim Ryan's a very good Democratic nominee, but at the same time, it's not his year. I think these polls are underestimating JD Vance. I could see this race being lean, but for right now I want to keep it as likely. As you can see in 2020, Ohio voted 8 points for Trump, and in 2016, it voted 8.1 points. Biden barely made a crack yet in Clinton's margin of loss. He did improve on our vote share significantly, but that also had to do with the fact that there's less third party voting in 2016. So that is an issue. And I think, it's just going to be extremely hard for Tim Ryan to win. I could see this race being lean, but likely is the more likely characterization right now. For Florida, I was about to go to the lean states. Florida, there's not a lot has changed either. Marco Rubio is still extremely popular in the state. There are, and Florida is trending very strongly rightward. I think Ron DeSantis being a very popular governor is going to help carry Rubio to victory. And Rubio did outperform Donald Trump in the state in 2016 by an impressive amount. He won by 8 points, while Trump only won the state by 1 point. Of course, in 2020, Trump won by the state by 3.4 points, and he was not expected to win Florida, let alone by that large of a margin. I mean, for Florida, because Florida is so close most of the time. Um, and Florida is still a competitive state, but I think they have very popular incumbents at this point. I think 2024 will be a lot more competitive in the Senate election for Rick Scott, but once again, that is not our focus today. Um, so yeah, and Val Demings is a very strong Democratic candidate, but it's just not her year. The environment, even though it has gotten a lot better for Democrats, it is still not her year, especially in a state like Florida. So now let's get into the lean Democratic states. I only have a couple, New Hampshire and Arizona. I want to go over Arizona first because I forgot to go over the race last time. Mark Kelly, of course, is the incumbent Democrat. He is doing extremely well against most of his Republican challengers. Right now, most people are expecting, at least from what I gather, most people are expecting him to go up against Blake Masters, who recently earned Donald Trump's endorsement. He is not a very good candidate at all. And you might be saying, well, Kelly might be leading, but it's by these impressive amounts, with a lot of undecided voters. And I agree with you, I don't think it's going to be this blowout margin. But I do think, Kelly does have a very strong history in Arizona. If you look back in 2020, when Biden only won the state by zero point 0.3 points, Kelly was able to win by 2.3 points. And of course, that did have to do with the fact that Martha McSally was a very weak incumbent. But at the same time, Blake Masters is not a very good candidate for Senate as well. I think, Republicans are kind of screwing themselves over in Arizona, more particularly in the governor's race. I think that the Senate election is a lot more likely to go to the Republicans than the governor's race, simply because, you know, I think Carrie Lake is a terrible candidate for the Republicans to put up because, she's not going to do well in Maricopa County, which is really the crucial county. If Republicans want to win Arizona in 2022, they need Maricopa County, and it does not look like they're putting up candidates who are moderate enough to appeal to those moderate Republicans who voted for McCain and Romney but hated Trump, and so they voted for Clinton and Biden. It does not look like the Republicans are putting up very appeasing candidates. I think the presidential race in 2024 will be different because it is a national race. But Mark Kelly's a very strong incumbent. Uh, you know, he has bucked his party on certain occasions, but there's not going to be major problems for him. He is unopposed in the Democratic primary, and he's doing very well in the polls. And even though we haven't got a lot of recent polls out of the state, you know I think as soon as the primaries occur in August, we're going to start seeing a lot more unfold in the state. And I still think Arizona could go red, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think it's the right well, it's not that it's not the right environment. It's just Republicans do not have very good candidates. um and so that's why I'm putting Arizona as a lean for Mark Kelly and the Democrats. Let's see. Okay, I was afraid that the internet was going out on me. For New Hampshire, of course, Maggie Hassan, there's not a lot different. to talk about here. Of course, the primary is not in a couple of months. I think Maggie Hassan is in a very good position since Chris Sununu decided not to challenge her. Sununu is, of course, the very popular Republican's, not senator, governor. He was expected to challenge Hassan, um, but he surprisingly or last fall he surprisingly said that he was not going to run for Senate and he would instead be running for re-election as governor. And I think that's kind of saved Hassan um in many ways. Still, it is going to be a competitive race. New Hampshire, even though it does strongly lean Democratic, still go can still go red. Of course, in 2020, that was an exception. Jean Shaheen won by 15 points. But in 2016, when Hassan was first elected against Kelly Ayotte, she only won by 0.14%. Of course, this was defeating an incumbent who won by over 20 points in 2010. But still, I think that the incumbency factor can really help Hassan. The incumbency factor definitely did not help Kelly Ayotte, but I think that Hassan, with a pretty weak Republican challengers, I think that's not going to bode well for the Republicans, especially when the primary is so late. The New Hampshire's primary is not until September, I believe, and we're in June right now, so we're just gonna have to see and wait on what happens. Excuse me, I feel like I'm about to sneeze. um, for the lean Republican states, I have Wisconsin and North Carolina. It's not a lot different. Here, Wisconsin, Ron Johnson is of course running for re-election. I think he was very undecided on whether or not he was going to run, but as the months went by, it became a lot clearer to most people that he was just waiting for the right opportunity to say that he would run. In 2016, he did say that if he was reelected to a second term, it would be his last, but he has since walked back on that statement and he has decided to run again. And Ron Johnson has done very well in years past. He outperformed Donald Trump in 2016. He won by 3.4%. In 2010, he won by 5 points against Russ Feingold. And both times, of course, 2010 was when Feingold was the incumbent Democratic senator, and 2016 he was looking to retake his seat, but he did not do very well. I think Wisconsin, is they don't really have they have the Democratic primary is starting to devolve into some chaos. This Mandela Barnes, the incumbent lieutenant governor, was expected to be the Democratic nominee. I still fully expect him to, but still there has been some growing support for other candidates in the race who might be better than Barnes, but who might do better than Barnes in a general election, but still, Wisconsin, especially if Mandela Barnes does run, I think Ron Johnson can outperform some, expectations. I don't think it's going to be likely. I really don't understand why people are putting it as likely, even safe, because Wisconsin is still a swing state. It's not going to be incredibly close anymore. I think Wisconsin really has kind of, become locked and loaded for Ron Johnson at this point. But, it's still a swing state. I think the governor's race, though, will be a lot more interesting to watch. In North Carolina, of course, Ted Budd is the Republican nominee. The Congressman Ted Budd won the primary to succeed retiring Republican Senator Richard Burr. He's going up against Sherry Beasley, the former Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court, I believe. In recent weeks, Budd has his lead has narrowed, but still, I think that North Carolina still could be likely, and I think it is still going to lean towards the Republican Party. I really think that, Sherry Beasley is a strong candidate, but once again, 2022, despite, growing support for Democrats and them starting to come back in polls, it's just not Democrats' year, and it's not Sherry Beasley's year. So now let's get down to the final three states. Sorry that this video is taking a while, but I want to talk about these last three states. Hopefully we can do this quickly. For the two tilt Democratic states, I have Pennsylvania and Nevada. For Pennsylvania, I'm moving this down from lean to tilt because John Fetterman, um, as a result of his stroke, he is not going to be on the campaign trail for at least another couple weeks until July. Recently, this past week, there was the first nonpartisan poll and the first poll in 6 months, showing John Fetterman fighting, or not fighting, um, leading Dr. Oz by 9 points, which is very impressive. But you have to keep in mind there is a lot of undecided voters here, and I think John Fetterman not being on the campaign trail to tend to his health is not a bad thing. But it is, not personally for himself. Of course, he needs to, get some help and just relax and and tend to his health because that's very important, but at the same time it's not going to help Democrats in Pennsylvania. um I think well, Dr. Oz, is of course uh has of has of course the fight between him and McCormick did resolve actually before my last prediction. So he has had some time to campaign, and he's now ahead of John Fetterman. And so I think that, Fetterman needs to have a lot of Democratic officials in Pennsylvania, like Bob Casey Jr. and possibly even President Biden, even though he's in Washington, but he's still relatively close. He can go around and they can start campaigning for him as he recovers. In Nevada, Nevada held its primaries this past week, excuse me, uh, and Catherine Cortez Masto and Adam Laxalt won the nominations for the Democratic and Republican parties. Cortez Masto has started to come back in recent polling. Adam Laxalt's a very strong candidate, of course, is the grandson of former Senator Paul Laxalt, who preceded Harry Reid in the Senate. He was a very strong ally of Ronald Reagan, and Harry Reid, of course, was replaced by Cortez Masto. So I think that there really has been a lot of there's been a lot of drama in this race, not in the primary results, of course. Nevada's primary results were not very competitive not very competitive at all. I think Adam Laxalt's lead is starting to narrow up. Cortez Masto really has some good momentum going. She is starting to come back in recent polling. Of course, this poll showing her leading by 21 points, that is not going to happen in any conceivable way. But, I think that Nevada is starting to have, or for, I think that Nevada is starting to lean towards the Democrats once again, and that it is a good sign for the Democratic Party, because without Nevada it's going to be very hard for them to hold on to their majority in the Senate. And as you can see right now, Democrats have officially taken the majority. I do expect them as of right now to still hold that majority, 50 seats, but I am going to move Georgia into the tilt Republican column. Herschel Walker has there has been, excuse me, there has been some very damning, if you ask me, allegations against him. Just recently, there have been allegations of him having multiple estranged children, and of course, there are multiple allegations against him of domestic abuse and personality disorder, and that is not going to help him. Of course, Raphael Warnock is a very strong candidate, um, and Republicans have shown how concerned they are about Walker, but at the same time, I think that that does not mean they're going to vote for Warnock under any means. Um, you know, they very well could, and I still think Warnock has a very strong, uh, you know, has a very strong chance at winning this race. But at the same time, Georgia is going to be an extremely close state. I think the governor's race is going to help Herschel Walker because Brian Kemp is doing very well against Stacey Abrams. And you'll see that as once I make my next governor's prediction for 2022. But I think, in Georgia, Herschel Walker does have a very slight lead. I think Georgia is really the ultimate toss-up in, this election cycle, and I think it will be all the way to the end. I think that it could go either way at this point, and I think that's going to be how it is. I think that, I am still tempted to keep Georgia in the Democratic column, but at the same time, there is still a lot of depressed Democratic turnout in the state, and Brian Kemp is going to influence a lot more Republican turnout, especially for Herschel Walker, despite these allegations surrounding him. So, yeah, that is pretty much it We now have the final result is 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans in the Senate. Of course, Democrats will hold on to their majority because of Kamala Harris, the vice president, breaking the tie, for the Democrats. The Democratic Party flips Pennsylvania, which gives them 50 seats, but they lose Georgia, which gives Republicans 50 seats. There really is, so that is pretty much it for this election analysis video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be back in about 2 weeks with my next prediction. I hope you guys, I hope you like this video. I will be at the beach next week, so I probably won't be uploading quite as much, but I will try to make some videos within the next week so that I can schedule them for so I can schedule them to premiere or to go public while I'm gone. I will try to get some out while I'm at the beach, but it's going to be very hard. But anyways, besides that, hope you guys enjoyed this election analysis video. I'll be back soon with my next governor's election prediction. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, turn on notifications. Check out my main channel, Interactor127, which is a non-political channel, if you want to see some more of my videos. Um, and you can also check out my comrade Growling Zeus 666's channel. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time when I talk about all things politics.